Israel, as we mentioned before, very much taking advantage of the ceasefire in Gaza to ramp up their militarism in the West Bank. This isn't Gaza. This is Jenin in the occupied West Bank. Israel's on a rampage, wiping out homes, massacring civilians, killing children. This isn't war. This is annihilation. And the so called international community watches in silence, complicit as always. So these are not airstrikes. These are controlled demolitions of 20 plus buildings in the West Bank.
فجروا المخيم. الله أكبر. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل.
Quite the sight. Demolitions in Jenin signal Israel's new approach in the West Bank. The West Bank is the new battleground in Israel's post-October 7th war. Jenin refugee camp is the front line. On Sunday, Israeli forces razed 23 buildings in Jenin, cutting a swath through the camp with simultaneous explosions that were heard across much of the northern West Bank. The large-scale demolitions resembled a tactic used in Gaza, where the Israeli military created corridors to divide the enclave. In Jenin, they appear to signal a more aggressive approach by Israel that could reshape the West Bank physically and politically, Israeli analysts and Palestinians said. Pardon me. If Israel tries to suppress militant groups in the West Bank with the use of large-scale force, many West Bank residents fear the results could echo those in Gaza. The destruction of dense urban areas, the displacement of many civilians, and mounting political anarchy. Israel is bringing the war to the West Bank, said Palestinian politician Mustafa Barghouti, noting that Israeli forces are already expanding their operations to other parts of the territory. The Jenin refugee camp will not return to what it was, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said last week as he visited the camp with army commanders. After the current offensive, which began with airstrikes and a ground forces maneuver in the Jenin camp 2 weeks ago, Israeli forces, quote, will remain in the camp to ensure that terror does not return, he said. Katz didn't say how long Israeli troops would stay or who would govern and provide basic services to the population under a prolonged occupation of the area. The fighting has caused widespread damage to the camp's dense housing, and many families have fled, but others remain, according to local residents. Israeli forces appear to be cutting the Jenin camp into segments, according to local residents and Israeli analysts, widening roads with bulldozers and demolishing buildings to facilitate the movement of troops through the labyrinth of cement and cinder blocks. The method resembles Israeli forces approaching Gaza, albeit on a smaller scale, for the time being anyway, said Michael Milstein, a former head of the Palestinian division at Israeli military intelligence. They are attempting to divide the camp into several parts. It's very similar to northern Gaza, he said. So, let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about this. In case that was all too complicated for you, Trump puts things in very simple terms here, right? So think of it as a pen, a beautiful pen.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel. That's not good, right? You know, that's a pretty big difference. I use that as an analogy. It's pretty accurate, actually. It's a pretty small piece of land. And it's amazing that they've been able to do what they've been able to do when you think about it. There's a lot of good, smart brain power, but it is a very small piece of land, no question about it.
Yeah, see, he appreciates Israel from a developer standpoint. Like that's his love of Israel. He's not exactly ideologically committed to Zionism. He just really is impressed that, the Israelis were able to, force out the Arabs so that they can come in and essentially gentrify the area. I mean, that's what he sees it. He sees it as a big gentrification project, and he loves it. So he's asked about Israel in the West Bank. That's what he's asked about.
It's like the Upper West Side of the Middle East.
Yeah,
used to be a lot of blacks there. A lot of blacks on the Upper West Side. No more.
No, it's amazing. They got them all out. They built some beautiful properties. I built some beautiful properties too. Yeah, exactly. That's the way it sounds.
It used to be you didn't want to walk around there at night.
Yep. Yep. No,
Now
that
you
is
got
exactly how he talks
Sephora.
about it.
They still got the
Yeah.
Gray's papaya there. Sometimes I go there.
Exactly. Yeah, this was his response. If he would support annexing the West Bank. Let's hear the first part of that one more time.
It's a small country in terms of land. See this pen, this wonderful pen? My desk is the Middle East. And this pen, the top of the pen, that's Israel.
Remember in Wolf of Wall Street where he says, "Sell me this pen.
Yeah.
Sell me this pen." And the putzes who don't know how to close a sale that's what they should have said. See, this pen, this is like Israel.
Yeah,
this is like Israel. It's a beautiful pen, reminds me of Israel. And that paper is the Middle East. So what you got to do is you got to grab this beautiful pen that's Israel and draw all over the paper. Occupy that whole paper with the writing from this beautiful pen. That would have closed the deal. Yeah, so that's how Trump sees it. Let's see how the people see it. Looks like father and daughter here who are waiting to hear on the state of the home in Jenin as the Israeli military forced the family out during raids on the camp in the occupied West Bank.
عشو بتطلعوا؟
على دارنا.
عدارهم. شو صار فيها داركم؟
والله مات عليها الجيش.
عرفت شو صار فيها؟
لا والله.
بتحاول تطمن عنها؟
بنحاول نطمن ونفوت مش عارفين. الحمد لله.
الحمد لله اليوم بدهم ينسفوا منازل.
وأنا بدي منعهم يعني.
Who's going to stop them?
بيعملوا اللي
That's
بدهم
right.
إياه، أنا بدي منعهم.
معقول تكون داركم؟
الله أعلم. يعني دارنا مش أحسن من هالدور اللي بالمخيم.
Who is going to stop them? Yep. That's a good question. Well, we should just explain to this guy, like, think of it as a pen. Think of it as a pen on a desk. Right?
Yeah, it's just like a pen. It's actually very small compared to the whole area here.
Yeah. You types of people, you brown Arab people, you have the whole Middle East. Israel's just one pen. So all we're doing here is we're giving them a second pen. There's one more pen, right? Gaza's a third pen, right? Maybe they could have put it to them that way. A mass burial took place yesterday in the Jenin refugee camp, which has endured 14 days of death and destruction at the hands of the occupying forces. Following the atrocities in Gaza, Western-backed Zionists are intensifying slaughter and ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. So, folks, there are some videos that we obviously can't show you here on YouTube of the maniacal Israeli settlers just doing more retail attacks, shall we say, on individuals in the West Bank. Right. These are not airstrikes. These are mobs of deranged lunatics terrorizing the civilian population there. Those attacks have, of course, escalated since Trump lifted the sanctions on them that Biden put on them. So here is this burial site. Okay, so this is a mass burial site, and if you notice, there aren't that many people surrounding the burial site. It's a fairly small gathering of people, considering there are a lot of people there being laid to rest, and that is for a reason. And the reason is, in the West Bank, Israel denied Jenin families right to bury loved ones at home. For nearly 2 weeks, 11 bodies lay in the morgues of Jenin as Israeli raids ravaged the city and its refugee camp. Their families were too frightened to bury them in Jenin because of Israeli snipers, drones, and artillery. Families are afraid to bury their loved ones in the camp cemetery because Israeli snipers are stationed on high buildings, Mahmoud al-Sadi, director of emergency services in Jenin, said on Monday. Some bodies have been in the morgue for over 13 days. We need Israeli clearance just to conduct a burial, and even that has been delayed multiple times. The raid on Jenin comes during a spike in Israeli violence in the West Bank since a fragile ceasefire halted Israel's 15-month assault on Gaza, which has killed close to 62,000 Palestinians. Of course, we think that is a gross underestimation, but that is the, I guess, updated official number now that the ceasefire has allowed them to finally count more bodies and left the enclave in ruins. The operation has driven nearly all of Jenin refugee camps, 20,000 people, from their homes, according to the United Nations. That is a pretty massive displacement of people that has gotten almost no coverage in the American press. 20,000? On Saturday, after 13 days.
All the coverage has been Gazans coming home to find the skeletons of their
Right.
family in the
Yes.
rubble of their houses.
Yes. Yep. On Saturday, after 13 days of violence in the camp, the Palestinian Liaison Office finally was able to coordinate with its Israeli counterpart to allow funerals for the people whose bodies lay in the morgues. The Israeli authorities imposed strict conditions: no processions, no public gatherings, only ambulances quietly transporting the dead to the cemetery, each accompanied by just 2 family members. Just 2 family members per dead Palestinian. That's why, as I said, the gathering seems pretty small, considering there are numerous bodies being laid to rest there. The delays forced Mahmoud of the emergency services and his team to improvise, burying 4 people in the eastern district of Jenin, which was less affected by the raid, but the burials of 7 others were postponed again. By Monday, Israeli forces finally permitted the burials of the 7 remaining people. But the mourning processions have been reshaped by Israeli military restrictions. No throngs of mourners, no slogans. "We've always honored our martyrs together," one mourner said, declining to give his name for fear of reprisals. "Now we bury them in silence." So that's what's going on in the West Bank right now. While this temporary ceasefire, which we hope evolves into a permanent ceasefire, that is ostensibly part of why Netanyahu is coming here. My guess is he and Donald Trump are at their podiums right about now. We will have a lot more to say about that on Thursday. But as Netanyahu comes here, this is what's happening in the West Bank, and it's happening largely because of the Gaza ceasefire. So it is really genocide whack-a-mole, right? You cut it off one place, they go to the other. The West Bank is the big prize that Israel wants. They want that more than they want Gaza. It's a much bigger piece of land that gets Israel all the way to the river, to the Jordan River. And so, that is the big prize. And that is being facilitated, as we knew it would, by the United States government under Trump, just as the Greater Israel Project would be promoted under Biden and or Harris had she won.
Yeah, Israel just strategically used the ceasefire to move their forces to the West Bank, so that while all of this is still in motion, while there's still a lot of confusion, and while Trump is completely disinterested, really, in anything other than a photo op, they can achieve the objective that they've always had, to take all of this land. And it's hard not to despair of what would stop them. That's what the man says there. Yeah, who's going to stop them? Who is going to stop them? We, on where we are, all we can do is try to economically cripple them. And long term, I think that will have an impact. I can't imagine tourism ever returning to Israel, and that's a lot of their economy. I think the boycott movement will grow and accelerate and be devastating to their ability to function long term, especially with America withdrawing from the world as it seems to be doing. They're not going to be able to prop them up forever if they go in that direction. But that doesn't help these poor people who, I mean, these are just, it's even after all this time covering it, it's hard to watch these videos.
No, it's just,
these stories. It's
fucking,
an almost
it's
inconceivable level of evil.
Yes,
Just
it is torture.
Evil. Yep. And you bring this to a Zionist, and most of them are not, don't think of themselves as monsters. Anything you show them like that, it's propaganda. It's Pallywood. It's Pallywood. They're all making it up for the cameras because they know they cannot accept that this is true and still support this. And there are very few people who are really willing to go against their community, The greatest trick that Zionists ever pulled was convincing Jews that Israel is Jewish,
Right.
that is being a Jew is synonymous with the state of Israel. And as a result, keeping it real, most Jews in America are Zionists. Right? We know from the polling, 80%, most of them. You bring this stuff to them, they can't accept that this is true. They can't accept that this is true. And Israeli Hasbara gives them ways to protect themselves from believing any of this. It's Pallywood. They make it all up. No, they have a whole film. That's what they believe. That's what they believe, that there's a whole film complex in Palestine where they shoot all this fake footage to get the world outraged. And anti-Semitism. I mean, just the paranoia. Like all of these very left-wing liberal reporters. Yeah, no, they're all virulently anti-Semitic. They're all it's not that you're supporting a colonizing power on a genocidal rampage. No, it's that all of these liberal reporters are anti-Semitic. That's what it is.
Please clap.